If I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes. I think that people that get asked about Bitcoin but have only spent an hour studying it or a few minutes, they just misunderstand it. And because they misunderstand it, they're goaded to criticize it or dismiss it out of hand just because they misunderstand it.
Michael Saylor begins by highlighting the current market dynamics of Bitcoin. He notes that Bitcoin's supply, valued at approximately $18 billion, faces demand surpassing this amount. However, this supply is expected to have to $9 billion shortly, emphasizing Bitcoin's scarcity and increasing value proposition. Saylor's mantra, "If I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes," underscores his long-term investment strategy for Bitcoin. Saylor argues that many critics of Bitcoin have only spent a minimal amount of time studying it, leading to widespread misunderstanding and skepticism. These critics often misinterpret Bitcoin as a replacement for fiat currencies like the dollar or view it as a threat to the banking system and governments. Some even confuse Bitcoin with other crypto tokens and mistakenly categorize it as a scam. Saylor clarifies that Bitcoin is, in fact, digital property, a revolutionary concept that, once understood, reveals its true value.
Bitcoin is a market where there's $18 billion of supply available, and there's a demand that's more than that, but in a couple of days, there won't be $18 billion of supply, there'll be $9 billion in supply. If I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes. And that's the Bitcoin idea too. Buy something you're going to hold for 10 years. I think that people that get asked about Bitcoin but have only spent an hour studying it or a few minutes, they just misunderstand it. And because they misunderstand it, they're goaded to criticize it or dismiss it out of hand just because they misunderstand it. Most people that are skeptics or cynics, they think it's a currency that's going to replace the dollar and replace the banking system or replace, governments. And on that basis, or they think or they confuse it with crypto tokens that are securities. And they either think it's a scam or they think it's a threat to the dollar. If you study it deeper, you realize it's property. And once you think of it as it's a digital building or it's digital property, I'm buying it instead of buying an apartment to rent out as retirement income, or I'm buying it instead of buying a building, or I'm buying it instead of buying an acre of land because I want to store my savings for 30 years. My first advice is don't invest your money, invest your time. Spend 100 hours. First spend 10 hours. Read the Bitcoin Standard. Go take a course. Go look at some of the videos. Start to study it. And try to get to 100 hours. Everybody in the world works 100 hours every 2 or 3 weeks, their entire life to make money. If you're going to work 40,000 hours in the course of your life to make money, you might as well work 100 hours to keep it, right? So make the investment. Then I would say, once you start to study it, you'll realize that it's backed by 15 gigawatts of electricity. That's 15 nuclear reactors. That's a lot of electricity. That's all the electricity that runs the U.S. Navy. Imagine all the power in the U.S. Navy. And then you'll see it's backed by 600 exahash. That's all the computer power that Amazon, Microsoft, and Google can muster. Maybe you don't know how many data centers Microsoft or Google or Apple have, but you know that they're very valuable companies. And if I show you a network which is more powerful than them, you would think, okay, that's very tangible. Bitcoin is digital money. It's something everybody needs. Nobody can stop, but a lot of people, most people don't understand. It's not any different than the first 5 years of electricity. You know, someone invents electricity and they come to you and they say, hey, I want you to put electricity in your house. And you say, well, my neighbor put it in his house and the house burned down. And the mayor says, we're going to pass a law making it illegal to wire your house with electricity so you don't burn down the building. And then someone says electricity is dangerous and it will kill us all and cause cancer. And then at some point they realize electricity it's complicated technology, but life is better with electricity in your house and electricity in your kitchen. and electricity in your hospitals, and electricity in your offices. So that didn't happen in 5 years. It took 30 years. It took an entire generation. And that's what happens with new technology and paradigm shift. This is digital money. What I'm saying is this is the digital transformation of money, of capital, of property. Right? If you want to give music to 1 billion people, you need digital music. If you want to give wealth to 1 billion people, you need digital capital. You're not going to give money and property rights. You're not going to give economic security to everybody on earth without the digital form of capital. And I think if you're an individual investor or you're a family, Bitcoin makes a good treasury asset. You can build a family on it. If you want to store assets for 100 years so your great-grandchildren are able to live well on what you've earned in your life, then Bitcoin is, I think, my best idea for that. But the reason that my company did it is my company had to do something. We either needed to sell the company. We were gonna have a fast death, a slow death, or we were gonna actually adopt a new idea. And so we did it in order to save the company, in order to assure the company's success. And I think Bitcoin can be used to back a company. You can use it to back a bank. You can use it to back a family. If you have a charity or a religion or any nonprofit organization, you need an endowment.
For individual investors, Saylor positions Bitcoin as an ideal treasury asset, suitable for long-term wealth preservation. He suggests that families could build their financial foundations on Bitcoin, ensuring economic stability for future generations. Similarly, he explains how companies can leverage Bitcoin to safeguard their assets and ensure corporate longevity. The process of adopting Bitcoin, as Saylor outlines, involves extensive education and alignment across all levels of an organization. For public companies, this means gaining consensus among executives, directors, auditors, banks, and shareholders, a complex but necessary endeavor for successful integration.
If you're an individual, then you have to put in the 100 hours and come to the conclusion yourself. If you're a family, you have to put in the 100 hours, get your wife or your husband, maybe your kids, maybe your parents to buy in, and then you can do it. If you're a private company, you have to put in the time and get your other executives, the top 2-3 executives, and maybe your one shareholder to buy in. If you're a public company, you would have to put in the time yourself. Then you have to educate your officers, the CFO, the CEO, the CTO, etc. Then you have to educate your outside directors. And then after you're aligned, then you have to start to work with your auditors and your outside law firm. And then after they're aligned with your bank, and then after they're all aligned, maybe you have to set up new vendor relationships with a crypto custodian or an exchange. So, and then after you've done all that, or while you're doing all that, you have to also get your shareholders aligned. But in a public company, that's a little bit trickier because you've got lots of shareholders and they're changing every minute. Right now, the main trend is institutional adoption of Bitcoin as a digital property and a store of value. The killer use case of Bitcoin is store of value. What's that worth? $100 trillion. What's Bitcoin worth now? $1 trillion? A bit more than $1 trillion. Institutional adoption, it takes the form of spot ETFs being released everywhere in the world. Your bank allowing you to buy it, your bank loaning you against it. When the options markets pop up, if it gets built into recommended portfolios, if it gets built into mutual funds, all of these things are institutional adoption. The wave of education is institutional adoption. That dynamic's going to continue and is unstoppable. It doesn't matter who wins the next election. In China, in Russia, in South America, in the United States, in Europe, everybody agrees you can own Bitcoin as property. And now they're just trying to figure out how much of it they want to own and how rapidly they want to support it and how enthusiastically they want to support it. The rest of the crypto economy is full of a bunch of good ideas without regulatory clarity. So the future of crypto tokens or digital tokens, digital securities, digital exchanges, digital currencies, all of these things are very politically complex. They're technically complex. There's complex competition. There's complex compliance issues. There are complex political issues. And there's societal issues to be worked out. Like everybody outside the US would like to have access to the dollar, and they want to move it quickly and cheaply at the speed of light with privacy. There are a lot of banking regulators in the US that aren't so sure that's a good idea. There are some politicians that think that individual corporations should be able to issue a stable coin. There are other politicians that think that banks should issue a stable coin. There are some politicians that think that government should issue a stable coin. There are some people that don't want one to be issued at all. And there are some people that think they should be able to create their own. That's a political debate that's going on everywhere in the world and will continue to go on right now. So I think that most of the really innovative ideas, they're uncertain and they'll be determined by competition and by politics. The straightforward idea that we all agree on, that has consensus, is Bitcoin is digital property. It's a commodity. It's an asset without an issuer. You can own it if you wish to own it.
Saylor underscores the trend of institutional adoption of Bitcoin as digital property and a store of value. This growing acceptance is evidenced by developments like the introduction of spot ETFs, bank services for buying and lending against Bitcoin, and its inclusion in recommended investment portfolios. He predicts that this institutional wave will continue, driven by the recognition of Bitcoin's unique value proposition. While the broader crypto economy faces regulatory and political challenges, Bitcoin stands out due to its clear consensus as digital property. Saylor acknowledges the ongoing debates around digital securities, tokens, and currencies, which are fraught with regulatory and competitive complexities. However, Bitcoin's status as a commodity and an asset without an issuer is widely accepted, providing a stable foundation for its continued growth. Please like and subscribe my channel.